What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Look, we decided to come back this week with something totally unique that we know will blow you guys away. So listen, these are 5 players that you probably don't like, but you should certainly consider owning them. Check this out. All right, Alexander, right off the top, when we look at the players on this list, this was a player that in the past had an insane ascension coming out of college. He was a player that everybody loved. He had an immense breakout early in his career at Pittsburgh. And here we are today. He is, a New England Patriot suddenly. And that's JuJu Smith-Schuster, who is currently the wide receiver 55 on Keep Trade Cut. A lot of people are hands off. A lot of people are at this point are like, this is gross. I don't want JuJu Smith-Schuster. Can we convince them why they should consider him, though?
I think they consider him because last year with, obviously it was with Mahomes, but he was 7th in average yards after catch, and he was 3rd in catch percentages among receivers. And he signed that big deal for 3 years, 33 mil. And I have to imagine that, Mac Jones comes back to form with the top 8 completion percentage when Bill O'Brien comes over here. So we don't have to deal with Matt Patricia kind of ruining the offense, but I think the two key metrics, the 7th in average yards after catch, 3rd in catch percentage, and I feel like, JuJu fits that mold within the intermediate parts of the field that they would need, and he could have some success there if, they increase the efficiency of the offense with O'Brien.
I totally agree. Look, I know that there's people out there that saw the quarterback flip-flop. They were like pro Bailey Zappi for whatever amount of games, 2 games. Then, Mac Jones steps back in. Mac Jones was the guy that they drafted a few years ago. He's clearly the guy that they still believe in, and he's had his hurdles. Look, Tom Brady, you were spoiled if you had Tom Brady, if you were a Patriots fan for as many years as he performed. But look, JuJu is not even 27 years old yet, and I'm here to tell you that he's not cooked, to the dismay of his haters that exist out there, coming off a season where he finished the wide receiver 10 in EPA, wide receiver 18 in total route wins, wide receiver 9 in route win rate, which is really important when we look at it. And an interesting nugget is that last year he actually had a career low slot rate and was on the outside over 60% of his total routes last year. So despite the career that he's had, that was the most outside snaps that he had ever had. And JuJu's not going to beat you deep. Even though that's what Mac Jones actually did quite a bit last year, he only had 3 deep targets while playing with Patrick Mahomes, which is kind of a staggering statistic in itself to hear that out loud. But 60% of his yardage also came against zone coverage, which is similar to T. Higgins and Chris Olave last year. So while, again, people want to put him in this box of totally stinks, he looks a lot like these guys that you really, really love. But on top of that, Mac Jones graded out as a top 13 quarterback and throws between 0 and 9 yards, an area where JuJu ran 62% of his routes last year, which was the wide receiver 10. And while ranking inside the top 10 in short area targets, he was the wide receiver 1 overall in receiving percentage at 93.3%. And I am not kidding. Like you mentioned, cue Bill Belichick's potential next short area volume hog. Something that has been a tried and true fact with this offense for many years up until recently. So I think we both like JuJu at his cost. Again, the wide receiver 55, not 27 years old yet. I love him.
And he doesn't have anybody to work with. I mean, Devontae Parker kind of sits on the outside, and then Tyquan Thornton is kind of a burner as well. So nobody kind of fits that intermediate route that they would need. Kind of fights the tight ends with Hunter Henry and stuff.
I mean, we haven't heard Tyquan's name at all through training camp so far. It has not even like the slightest, not even the beginning of his name has been murmured. So I'm not concerned about it. I'm really excited actually to see him in this offense. I think JuJu has been, again, sort of dismissed for quite a while now since his biggest year in Pittsburgh. But I digress. Let's talk about a quarterback. The first of 2 quarterbacks, by the way, stay tuned. On this list, QB 18 on Keep Trade Cut. He's had multiple top 10 finishes in his career to this point, and he's loaded with weapons. That's Jared Goff. What are your thoughts on Jared Goff?
I think the thoughts I have on Jared Goff is when Jared Goff is given time to throw, he's an efficient passer. And he was average 17.1 fantasy points per game. He also he has a top 5 offensive line. He's got arguably one of the best receivers, top 5 best receivers, top 10. Amon-Ra St. Brown, up and coming, and then he was 5th in the NFL in red zone attempts last year for passing touchdowns. So with that being said, he has immense upside with, the additions of the other weapons that they added, like Jahmyr Gibbs. And then we mentioned the revamped offensive line. Jameson Williams could come back mid-season, and this offense could go through the roof. Jared Goff, I love him. He's just going to fit into this top 10 offense. His top 5 offense, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a fantastic offense, and I think you mentioned a lot of great points. A couple things I want to add. Despite the fact that Goff was the QB 14 last year, and again, as you mentioned, 17.1 fantasy points per game, we saw his yards per attempt rise to 7.6 and his total touchdowns climb to 29, which are both the highest rates since 2018 for Jared Goff. But on top of that, he was top 10 or better in clean pocket accuracy, deep ball accuracy, under pressure accuracy, red zone accuracy, and also top 10 in these coverage metrics: completion percentage against coverage, passer rating, and accuracy rating versus man and zone. And he was the QB2 in EPA last year. On top of all of this, now you factor in Jameson Williams and make it back to the GD football field just once. He's a guy that had a college 19.9 yards per reception, so very clearly dynamic in the intermediate, big deep threat. That's going to add to something that's, been lacking a little bit in Jared Goff's toolbox. And lastly, Brad Holmes, GM of this team, already mentioned a month or two ago that they have been in talks, sort of preliminary talks with Jared Goff to extend him or give him an extension while in Detroit. And as we talked about, it's sort of the purgatory. Like, to me, he's sort of in that Andy Dalton realm where it's like if you move on from him, things could get much, much worse. Now, they could get better, but they could get significantly worse. And as we know, quarterback play is everything in the league. If you want to be a competitive team, if you want to get into the playoffs or have a shot at a title, you have to have a quarterback. And Jared Goff is good enough to get you there if you could put a defense and, as you mentioned, a great offensive line around him. I think he could play surprisingly well this year. And again, at the cost of the QB 18 on keep trade cut. I mean, come on. In super flex leagues, the QB 18, the guy's not 29 years old yet. We got quarterbacks playing into their 40s, Alexander.
Yeah. And I mean, you can envision a scenario that he kind of hits past that ceiling that he had in 2018. He could hit like 19, 20 points per game with all the weapons that they have, especially if he hits his stride when Williams comes back. But again, you got Gibbs and you got all these plethora of weapons. And the biggest weapon, I think, is that top 5 offensive line. So
absolutely. And again, how many great weapons does he have around him? We've talked about it. Elite weapons coincide with quarterbacks making jumps. Amon-Ra St. Brown, very clearly elite. If Jameson Williams is 70% as good as everybody who keeps propping him into the top 17 on keep trade cut, despite the fact that I haven't even seen him on a field yet.
One reception.
Yeah,
he averages like 40 yards per reception. So
that's all we need. So with that being said, Jared Goff is an incredible value right now, especially if he gets a 3 to 4 year extension after this. I mean, that will be what solidifies his value and drives it up in the future. Okay, let's hit our first running back of this group. Now, this is the most shocking thing, because if you and I get in a time machine and we tell everybody, hey, eventually this guy is going to be the running back 25 amongst consensus rankings, and be like, get the hell out of here. How did that happen? Cam Akers, somehow, some way, just barely 24 years old, is currently the running back 25 on keep trade cut. Make it make sense.
I really don't know. I mean, coming out in 2020, drafted in the second round with the Rams, I thought he was going to smash. It could fit and fill 70-80% of that Todd Gurley role for the Rams with Sean McVay. He had a great profile, 5'10", 217 pounds, great college production. But really what's really kind of helped us talk about this here is his last year when weeks 13 through 18, 17 points per game, first in rushing yards during that time span, efficiency, you name it. He was getting a full workload, and I don't know what changed. I mean, maybe they got more confidence into him. He had the Achilles in the preseason a few years ago, dips in efficiency with fumbles and stuff like that. But I think really we're kind of seeing what his upside was that we were all going crazy about, back in 2020.
What's really crazy is everybody told me Zach Evans. Zach Evans was the guy you got to look out for. Zach Evans, we had people writing articles and making videos and putting his face on T-shirts and saying, This is the guy to be concerned about. And again, radio silence out of training camp thus far on that name, and only guy behind him is Kyron Williams. So I would say get the hell out of here on that one. But with that being said, again, 24 years old, outside almost the top 25 on keep trade cut. You mentioned it. Significant injury. ACL used to be a death sentence. Achilles tendon is still in many regards a death sentence for a player's career. But we look at him in the 5 games last year where he saw a snap share above 70%. He was the running back 8, the running back 20, the running back 1, the running back 14, and the running back 11. So that's 3 RB1 finishes across that span. And in those 5 games, Cam Akers saw 20.4 touches per game, which would have been a top 5 number last year, right behind Jonathan Taylor. So when you think about him getting healthy, him getting right, him getting the opportunity, here he is next to a guy that's considered generational or prolific in the league with Jonathan Taylor. But if I go on a little further, those same 4 final games in that big stretch, PFF graded him an 81 or better in 3 of the 4, including a finish of 3.1 yards created after contact was the additive amount across those games. Again, that ranked with KW9, good old Kenneth Walker. That ranked with Jonathan Taylor. And the last fact that I want to bring up is that his contract for many people may look like it ends in 2023, but because he was injured during training camp in 2021 and did not play at least 6 regular season games, he did not accrue an actual NFL season, which means that he changed from an unrestricted free agent to a restricted free agent, which means that the Rams can actually keep Akers until the end of 2024. So the reality is all these people are fearful of him. They think he's at the end of his contract. He's not. He's got 2 years left. And at the end of last year, he looked fantastic. So I think for many reasons, when we're struggling to find good running backs, if you can get a young, previously elite runner that flashed once again outside the top 25 in price tag, good Lord, give me that guy, right?
And you could totally envision a scenario that he's the focal point of that offense. If Kupp and Stafford continue some of the injury issues that they have, they could just keep feeding him until, up until that top 10 pick that they would go and try to get. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's move on to our first tight end. Now, for many people, look, I play in tight end premium formats. A lot of times it's 1.5. For you guys that are in 1.75, that's better. If you guys are in a full point tight end premium, that's an immense scoring difference. And I'm sure you guys are significantly aware in this format. But this tight end that we're going to bring up next is currently the tight end 16 on Keep Trade Cut, even after getting a monster contract extension. I think there's a lot of recency bias baked into this, not so much just for him, but for the quarterback that he plays with. And I'm sure that you might agree with that statement. Talk to me about Cole Kmet of the Chicago Bears.
I mean, the one thing with Cole Kmet is the 94% snap share last year, which ranked first among tight ends. And then, with Justin Fields, he had 7 touchdowns where he had that streak where he wasn't catching any touchdowns. I think you envision the contract tied with the snap percentage, and you can also envision, with the weapons that they've added in, like DJ Moore, they've revamped the offensive line through the draft. He was second in average separation. There's a scenario where he's, top 10 option at the position. If not, if Fields is as good as everyone is stating right now in the preseason, I mean, you want the tight end tied to Justin Fields, right? Yeah. So, and so the touchdowns could come right then and there. And then the rushing prowess with the way Justin Fields uses that utilization, he'll be on the field all the time in those rushing situations. So if they switch to play action or if there's any option game, Cole Kmet will be the guy. And I love Cole Kmet. I think he's an absolute smash. I think people should be getting him as much as they can.
I mean, look, it's not often that these tight ends break out earlier than age 24. The tight end position historically requires, nuance and positional understanding to succeed. Oftentimes you're playing in line or you're blocking. The opportunity to get outside and catch passes doesn't usually happen right out of the gate. It has happened for some people, but it takes time. Ask Noah Fant, Irv Smith, Alberto, Jonnu Smith, David Njoku. I mean, and recently he got a contract, but it takes a long time for these guys. But Kmet was actually decent last year. And again, you mentioned it. There's a fairly low bar. So when we talk about tight end rankings where he finished amongst the group of tight ends, like again, he was tight end 4 in total touchdowns. Like, it's a pretty low damn bar to be put up against. But like you mentioned, snap share matters. Even though he was only the tight end 8 in target share, a 19.3% target share of what was going on in Chicago last year, not exceptional. But if you believe Justin Fields takes a step forward and you believe he maintains or even slightly betters this target share at even 20%, we could be looking at a guy in that Pat Freiermuth range, a guy that's looking at 80 plus targets, 80 to 100. I think 100 would be the absolute ceiling. I can't really envision him getting there exactly, short of probably an injury. Because again, 377 pass attempts for this team last year. Even if you throw 100 at Justin Fields, that's 480. And I think a lot of people are actually saying that's not going to happen unless the rushing comes down. And I did a bunch of tweets on this and went way into the weeds on it. But if his efficiency comes up, that's a big boost. If the target, if the passes come up, that's a big boost. So that's what it comes down to. He could very possibly end up top 5 at the position in total targets if things go his way and Fields takes a step forward.
I mean, Dante Pettis was a wide receiver on this team. They had Dante Pettis, Darnell Mooney, Equanimous St. Brown. That's who they were rolling out with. So I can imagine that the weapons were so subpar that they had to lean on the rushing ability of Justin Fields to get open. And with the addition of DJ Moore, they drafted, they got Claypool. I think DJ Moore alone opens up the field so much for all these other players, especially someone that's going to be on the field for 94% of the time.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's an easy buy at the tight end 16.
Absolutely.
This has happened with tight ends before. We haven't seen them break out, then suddenly they're just the guy. And that could happen. Yeah. Nobody would be surprised. I mean, I would be kind of surprised, but if he ended up with 110 targets this year, right? If they throw 460 times, 470, and he somehow gets nearly a quarter of that, again, let's say he gets 22% and he ends up somewhere 100 or 100 more, if that's possible. Like, you're going to look back and go, damn, what was I thinking? I faded him because I faded Fields. He hasn't been that bad. You're fading him on the understanding or the belief that Fields doesn't take the step forward. So again, slight leap of faith, but Fields, as they're attempting to improve this situation, right?
Absolutely. I think they've improved the weapons around him, and he was a quarterback that came out with a fantastic QBR. So he was a great passer coming into the draft. So I can't imagine that he does not a efficient guy.
He was a great passer, but this next quarterback that we're going to mention, who somehow is the QB 28 on Keep Trade Cut, he's a starting quarterback, and how old is he? 23? He's a starting quarterback in the NFL. And he is currently the QB 28 on Keep Track. He's not even 23. He's 22.8 years old.
No.
We're talking decimals on this show, by the way. So listen, we've got an audience that's going to grow. We've got people that don't look at the same metrics we do, but he's 22.8 years old, not even 23 yet. Sam Howell. Convince the people of Sam Howell. I mean, his college profile alone shouldn't it?
His college profile alone, I don't understand how. I mean, everyone says it. They don't understand that anybody who talks about Sam Howell says, how did Sam Howell get in the 5th round? Because this guy has first-round talent. He should have gone in the 1st round. I mean, as a 19 years old, he threw 38 passing touchdowns for 3,600 passing yards. And that's in the ACC. It's not – he wasn't playing in a small school. This is still good. It's still the ACC. Big competition. And that tied with and then his following up his final year at 21 years old, he had 24 passing touchdowns going down, but then he rushed for over 800 yards. He was electric in college. He also was 3rd in the ACC's history with 92 passing touchdowns in his career. And it's the most ever by a player in 3 or fewer seasons. And there's some really great quarterbacks that have come out of the ACC, so, and then, ranked in 5th touchdowns responsible, so on and so forth. So many records in the ACC, 2nd in passing efficiency. It's just, he has the tools, the arm talent that all the scouts talk about. He has the production. He's got the requisite size. He's not, one of these smaller guys that we always knock about. So again, I don't understand how coming from North Carolina, maybe Mitchell Trubisky hurt him. I don't know. But, coming from North Carolina, he's a fantastic prospect.
Well, you mentioned, right? So in that last year, he lost all the guys to the pros, whether it was De'Ami Brown and it was Michael Carter and it was Javonte Williams and part of his O-line. And you lose a bunch of these guys, but like you look back, breakout age, 92nd percentile, college yards per attempt, 96th percentile, college QBR, 71st percentile, which is still really, really great. And you talked about it in his first season and his second season combined, he had a TD rate of 8.6 or higher across both years. So this guy was finding the end zone. He was being highly successful. And now you put him with Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel, Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson, Logan Thomas. If he's healthy, he was a very dynamic tight end. And what's really interesting is the Commanders ranked 20th in pass attempts last season, but it's entirely possible this year while facing what should be the 9th most difficult strength of schedule and a more capable quarterback that this is a team that could trend towards top 10 in total pass attempts, which would be an enormous boost to a guy that's the QB 28 on Keep Trey Cut. And by the way, people were throwing crazy shade at his rushing numbers. Like people are going, oh, well, he's slow. First off, 74th percentile 40-yard dash at his size. Number one, sir, I say good day. Number two, 828 rushing yards is not an accident, okay?
No.
That is not an accident. So I really don't care. No, he's not Lamar. No, he's not Kyler. No, he's not going to burn you with his running. But it is 1,000% a part of his game. Don't believe me? Go look at the only game that he played quarterback in last year. He actually had a rushing touchdown in that game to pair with a passing touchdown against Dallas, by the way. And so I really like Sam Howell a lot, and I think there's a ton to be excited about. And, dude, for all the people that are, like, dying on the Brock Purdy hill, and I get that Brock Purdy played well, right? He didn't throw it deep downfield. He wasn't an explosive quarterback, but he was efficient, did well, and now everybody's got him in that QB 16, 17 range. Sam Howell's nearly twice that number, but could potentially end up looking very similar to that. Howell has all the tools and a ton of weapons around him. It won't shock me at all if he's the starter going into next year too. I think he's that good, and I'm really excited to see him play. And he might be the one quarterback I'm actually the most invested in seeing succeed this year.
And he's got, the weapons around him can help him out, right? Like if he's at least, he's efficient. He was super efficient in college. If he throws to guys like Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel, guys that are yards after the catch, throwing in the backfield to Antonio Gibson, we know he's a freak athlete. It's really hard to fail if you can get those guys in space. And, the inclusion of like someone like Eric Bieniemy coming from Andy Reid offense could completely, leverage that kind of talent and put those guys out in the field. And that kind of potential is just insane, especially where, Sam Howell's going.
Love it. Love it. Alexander, what a contribution to the show that you've been, sir. I salute you. Fantastic. So listen, guys, make sure you hit the subscribe button on this show. Alexander and I are going to be pumping out a ton more content. We have got a schedule put together. We're looking to put together at least probably 2 videos a week at this point, possibly more than that. So stay locked in here. We're going to give you balanced takes with perspective behind them. We're not going to blow total smoke up your ass. It's certainly not our goal as we continue to build this forward. And guys, what type of content do you want to see? What type of content would you like to see next? Drop us a like. Make sure you comment below. I get back to everybody on there. And again, tell us what sort of videos or topics you'd like covered. That's certainly something that we can curate and put into our catalog of stuff that's coming in the future. Also, check out dynastyrankings.com. I'm going to keep saying this. We're very close, Alexander. I don't know. We're
very close. Yeah, we're just working through some kinks. So, yeah, we're very close.
Yeah, we're working through kinks. And also, check the description. Join the Discord channel. It's growing by the day. Very active group. We've got fantasy leagues stemming off of there. People are constantly talking trades. It's a really fun group of people. It truly feels like a community at this point, and I really do enjoy being a part of it. So check that out as well, guys, and I hope you enjoy all the new content that keeps coming your direction.